If you are over the age of 55, and you have recently experienced the terrifying, hollow sensation of losing your train of thought mid-sentence, or if you have stood in the middle of a room completely paralyzed because you cannot remember why you walked in there, you must listen to me right now. You are likely harboring a deep, suffocating fear that your brain is simply breaking down, that the unstoppable shadow of Alzheimer's disease has found you, and that you are slowly losing your grip on your independence, your memories, and your own identity. But I am going to reveal a biological paradox so profound that it will completely shatter everything you thought you knew about age-related memory loss. The heavy, terrifying brain fog that is stealing your cognitive clarity is not a symptom of an incurable, mysterious genetic disease. You are losing your memory because at this exact biological second, your brain cells are literally starving to death, despite the fact that you might be carrying excess weight and eating what your doctor calls a perfectly healthy, balanced diet. I promise you that by the time we finish this journey, you will understand the exact hidden metabolic poison that is drying up your memory centers, and you will possess the precise biological key to turn the power back on in your mind. For the entirety of your adult life, you have been subjected to a deeply flawed, historically disastrous medical system that has handed down a sentence of profound guilt to the aging population. When your memory begins to falter, society and even your own physicians subtly blame you. They suggest that you simply did not do enough crossword puzzles, you watched too much television, or you failed to keep your mind active. This deeply ingrained narrative is not only incredibly cruel, it is scientifically and entirely inaccurate. The guilt and the shame you feel about your fading memory are the direct result of a colossal failure in modern medical communication and a rigid adherence to dietary guidelines that have systematically poisoned the human brain for the last 40 years. For decades, the global neurological community has been entirely obsessed with looking at the brain as an isolated organ, treating dementia as a localized disease of sticky plaques and tangled proteins. They completely ignored the rest of the body. They completely ignored the undeniable biological reality that the brain is connected to the stomach, to the liver, and to the pancreas. Because of this monumental institutional blind spot, they missed the fact that the most devastating neurological disease of our time is actually, at its core, a severe metabolic crisis. To completely change the trajectory of your cognitive health and halt the destruction of your memory, we must fundamentally shift how you view the biological universe inside your skull. We tend to think of the brain as a quiet, static, meat-based computer. In reality, your brain is the most aggressive, most energy-hungry, highest-performance biological engine in the known universe. Despite making up only about 2% of your total physical body weight, your brain ruthlessly demands and consumes a staggering 20 to 25% of all the energy your body produces every single day. Every single time you blink your eyes, every time you take a breath, every time you recall the face of your grandchild, and every time you attempt to learn a new piece of information, your 86 billion brain cells are burning through colossal amounts of biological fuel. For the vast majority of human history, and for the vast majority of your life, the primary fuel running this magnificent engine has been a simple sugar called glucose. When you eat a meal, your digestive system breaks the food down into glucose, which enters your bloodstream. This glucose then travels up to your brain to feed your starving neurons. But here is the critical, foundational mechanism that the medical establishment failed to explain to you. Glucose cannot just freely walk into a brain cell. Your brain cells are highly secure fortresses. They have heavy, locked doors on the outside of their cellular walls. In order for the glucose fuel to actually get inside the cell and power your memory, it requires a highly specific biological key to unlock the door. That key is a master hormone produced by your pancreas, and its name is insulin. In a healthy, vibrant, youthful body, this system works like a perfectly synchronized biological ballet. You eat a meal, your blood sugar rises slightly, your pancreas releases a small, precise burst of insulin, the insulin travels to your brain, it turns the lock on the cell door, the door opens wide, the glucose floods inside, and your brain is instantly powered up, resulting in crystal clear focus and sharp memory. But over the last 40 years, a catastrophic change occurred in our environment. In the late 1970s, the government introduced the food pyramid, and the medical establishment commanded the entire population to stop eating natural, healthy fats and to start basing our entire diets on highly processed carbohydrates, refined grains, and massive amounts of hidden sugars. You dutifully followed these rules. You switched from butter to margarine, you ate the whole wheat pastas, you consumed the low-fat yogurts packed with high-fructose corn syrup, and you snacked on the rice cakes. You did exactly what authority told you to do to protect your heart. But what the doctors completely failed to understand was the devastating compounding effect this diet was having on the delicate insulin receptors in your brain. When you consume a diet chronically high in carbohydrates and refined sugars, your bloodstream is subjected to a violent, never-ending roller coaster of blood sugar spikes. Every single time your blood sugar spikes, your pancreas desperately pumps out massive waves of insulin to try and clear the sugar away. For decades, your brain has been absolutely flooded, day and night, by a screaming siren of insulin. Your brain cells are highly intelligent biological entities. They are designed to protect themselves from overstimulation. When a brain cell is constantly bombarded by massive toxic waves of insulin year after year, it does exactly what you would do if you lived next to a blaring fire alarm. It puts on earmuffs. The brain cells physically change the shape of their insulin receptors. They stop listening to the signal. They become entirely deaf to the hormone. This condition is a devastating biological state known as insulin resistance. And this is the exact moment the profound, terrifying paradox of modern dementia takes hold. Because your brain cells are now resistant to insulin, the biological key no longer fits the lock on the cellular door. The doors are jammed shut. The tragedy is that you can have a bloodstream absolutely overflowing with massive, toxic amounts of glucose. You can be eating enormous meals, and your blood sugar can be dangerously high. But because the insulin keys are broken, not a single drop of that fuel can actually get inside the brain cell. Your brain is literally surrounded by an ocean of energy, but it is starving to death. The fuel is trapped in the hallway, and the doors are locked. When a brain cell is deprived of glucose, it begins to panic. It powers down its non-essential functions. The very first function to go offline when the brain is starving is the manufacturing of new memories. Deep inside your brain, there is a tiny seahorse-shaped organ called the hippocampus. This is the grand central station of your memory. It is the most metabolically demanding, energy-hungry structure in your entire skull. Therefore, when the glucose doors jam shut, the hippocampus is the very first structure to suffer from starvation. The heavy, suffocating brain fog you experience every afternoon, the forgotten names, the sudden confusion. This is not the slow, inevitable ticking of the aging clock. You are feeling the acute, agonizing sensation of your hippocampus physically starving and begging for fuel it cannot access. If this starvation continues for years, the brain cells simply give up. They undergo a process called apoptosis, which is programmed cellular suicide. The cells die, the hippocampus physically shrivels and shrinks in size, and the memories are permanently erased. This devastating revelation is not just a theory. A groundbreaking team of researchers at Brown University, led by a brilliant neuropathologist named Dr. Suzanne de Monte, made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the global medical community. By analyzing the brains of patients who had died of severe Alzheimer's disease, her team discovered that the memory centers of these brains were in a state of profound, absolute insulin resistance. The insulin signaling in these brains had collapsed by over 80%. The brains were entirely starved of glucose. This connection was so undeniable, so physically absolute, that Dr. de Monte and her team boldly coined a new medical term for Alzheimer's disease. They named it type 3 diabetes. Let the sheer gravity of that sink in. The most feared neurological disease on the face of the earth, the disease you have been told is an unstoppable genetic tragedy, is actually type 3 diabetes. It is diabetes of the brain. It is the end-stage result of a lifetime of metabolic dysfunction caused by the food pyramid and the modern Western diet. The toxic amyloid plaques and the tangled tau proteins that neurologists have been trying to scrub away for decades are not the root cause of the disease. They are simply the biological garbage, the toxic debris left behind by brain cells that have starved to death because their insulin locks were permanently jammed. This revelation is deeply terrifying, but nested within this terror is the most profound, empowering hope imaginable. If the cognitive decline you are experiencing is being driven by brain starvation and broken insulin receptors, it means your destiny is entirely within your control. It means that to halt the brain fog, to stop the starvation, and to give your memory centers a massive, immediate opportunity to heal and regenerate, you do not need a miraculous, experimental pharmaceutical drug that costs thousands of dollars a month. You simply need to execute a highly targeted, aggressive metabolic intervention to completely bypass the jammed locks and deliver an alternative, premium fuel directly into your starving brain cells. To orchestrate this massive cognitive rescue, we must look to a magnificent, hidden evolutionary failsafe built deeply into the genetic code of the human body. Our ancient ancestors did not have access to a constant supply of carbohydrates. They regularly survived through harsh winters and long periods of famine, where glucose was entirely unavailable. If the human brain could only run on glucose, our species would have gone extinct hundreds of thousands of years ago. To ensure our survival, nature equipped the human liver with a miraculous backup biological generator. When your body is entirely depleted of glucose, and your insulin levels drop to a completely flat, quiet baseline, your liver actively switches gears. It begins to break down your own stored body fat and converts it into a completely different, highly efficient, extremely powerful biological fuel source known as ketones. Ketones are the absolute holy grail of senior cognitive health. They are the ultimate premium high-octane fuel for an aging brain. And here is the breathtaking, miraculous reason why. Ketones do not require insulin to enter a brain cell. Let me repeat that, because it is the secret to unlocking your memory. Ketones do not require a biological key. When ketones travel up to the brain, they completely bypass the jammed, broken insulin locks on the front door of the cell. They utilize a completely different, highly specialized transport mechanism called the monocarboxylate transporter. They essentially walk right through the back door of the brain cell, completely unhindered, and flood the starving factory with massive amounts of clean, usable energy. When an aging, glucose-starved hippocampus is suddenly bathed in ketones, the biological reaction is almost instantaneous. The lights literally turn back on. The brain cells that were powering down and preparing to die suddenly roar back to life. The brain fog lifts, the words come back to your tongue, and the spatial awareness returns, because you have finally given the engine a fuel it can actually burn. To flood your brain with these miraculous ketones and completely bypass the insulin resistance of type 3 diabetes, you do not need to engage in a miserable, impossible starvation diet. You simply need to dramatically alter the chemical signals reaching your liver. The absolute most critical step is to brutally and unapologetically sever your dependency on refined carbohydrates and hidden sugars. You must recognize that the morning oatmeal, the whole wheat toast, and the low-fat, high-sugar yogurts are not heart-healthy staples. They are the exact metabolic poisons that are actively jamming the locks on your memory cells. By aggressively reducing your carbohydrate intake and replacing those calories with massive amounts of high-quality, rich, protective dietary fats, you force your liver to turn on the backup generator. But we can take this intervention a massive step further. We can artificially force the production of ketones even faster by utilizing a highly specialized, intensely powerful type of fat known as medium-chain triglycerides, or MCTs. MCTs are a rare, unique form of fat found predominantly in natural coconut oil. Unlike regular fats, which must travel through a long, complex digestive process, MCTs bypass normal digestion completely. When you consume MCT oil, it is rapidly absorbed straight through the portal vein and delivered directly to the liver. The liver has no choice but to instantly convert these specific fats into a massive, rushing wave of ketones. By simply incorporating a tablespoon of highly purified MCT oil or raw, unrefined coconut oil into your morning coffee or tea, you are providing your starving brain with an immediate, high-octane rescue fuel that completely bypasses your broken insulin receptors. You are flipping the emergency switch and feeding your hippocampus exactly what it needs to rebuild its memory networks. Furthermore, we must deploy the single most powerful, scientifically validated behavioral tool for lowering your baseline insulin levels and healing the broken locks on your brain cells, the ancient, deeply healing practice of time-restricted feeding, often called intermittent fasting. For the last 40 years, the medical establishment told you to eat 6 small meals a day to keep your metabolism up. This was a catastrophic instruction. Eating 6 times a day means you are chronically spiking your insulin 6 times a day, ensuring that your brain cells remain deaf, resistant, and locked. To heal the receptors, you must give your pancreas a rest. You must allow the blaring fire alarm of insulin to go completely silent. By simply condensing all of your meals into a highly specific, 8-hour window during the day, and fasting for the remaining 16 hours, you allow your insulin levels to drop to rock bottom. When the insulin is finally quiet, the brain cells slowly begin to take their earmuffs off. The receptors physically heal, they regain their sensitivity, and over time the biological keys begin to fit the locks again. A 16-hour fast is not a starvation diet. It is a profound, non-negotiable biological reset button for a brain that is suffering from type 3 diabetes. However, nutrition and fasting are only the chemical half of the rescue mission. To permanently shatter the grip of insulin resistance and restore the metabolic youth of your brain, we must engage the massive, powerful mechanical engines of your physical body. Your skeletal muscles are the largest consumer of glucose in your entire system. They are the ultimate biological sink for blood sugar.
Now,
I understand that the word exercise can be deeply intimidating, especially if you are managing the severe daily physical realities of aging joints, osteoarthritis, or chronic pain that makes traditional exercise sheer agony. The fitness industry has done a terrible disservice to seniors by promoting the idea that movement must be agonizing, high-impact, and sweat-drenched to be effective. Let me absolutely absolve you of that misconception right now. Your brain and your metabolism do not care if you are running a marathon or sitting in a chair. They only care about the mechanical contraction of muscle tissue. When you physically contract a muscle, a magnificent biological loophole is triggered. The muscle cells possess a secret, secondary set of doors called GLUT4 transporters. These specific doors are designed to suck glucose directly out of your bloodstream to fuel the physical movement. And here is the miracle. The GLUT4 doors do not require insulin to open. They open purely through the mechanical force of the muscle contracting. This means that if you have high blood sugar and your brain is starving due to insulin resistance, the absolute fastest, most effective way to clear the toxic sugar out of your blood and lower your insulin levels is to contract your muscles. You can achieve massive metabolic benefits through entirely low-impact, deeply protected modifications. You do not need to walk on pavement if your knees are compromised. Seated stationary pedaling, aquatic therapy, where the water supports your body weight while providing constant resistance, or even a daily routine of isometric tension, simply squeezing and holding your thigh muscles while sitting in your favorite chair, forces the GLUT4 doors to open. 5 to 10 minutes of gentle, pain-free muscle contraction immediately after a meal acts as a massive metabolic vacuum, sucking the glucose out of the blood, hushing the insulin alarm, and allowing your brain to heal. We have completely redefined the true nature of your memory loss. You now understand that the heavy brain fog is not a genetic curse, but the desperate symptom of a starving brain suffering from type 3 diabetes. We have laid out the absolute necessity of abandoning the toxic food pyramid, lowering your carbohydrates, and deploying the miraculous rescue fuel of ketones through MCT oil and time-restricted fasting. You possess the gentle, pain-free mechanical protocols to use your muscles as a metabolic sink, bypassing insulin entirely and clearing the toxic sugar from your system. You have the exact scientifically validated blueprint to turn the backup generator on and flood your memory centers with the power they need to survive. However, everything we have discussed today about restoring the fuel supply to your brain cells completely relies on a hidden, microscopic biological clock that dictates when your brain is allowed to heal. Even if you perfectly execute the nutritional protocols and flood your brain with ketones, your brain cells can only repair their broken insulin receptors during the deepest, most profound stages of sleep. But there is a terrifying, highly specific environmental toxin found in nearly all municipal tap water that physically calcifies a tiny pea-sized gland in the center of your brain, completely destroying your body's ability to produce the master sleep hormone required to enter that healing state. If this gland is turned to stone, your brain will never repair itself, no matter how perfectly you eat. If you want to discover exactly what this hidden water toxin is, and the incredibly simple 10-second morning protocol to naturally decalcify this master gland and unlock the deepest, most neurologically restorative sleep of your entire life, you need to click the video on your screen right now, and I will show you exactly how to take your brain back.